Hey guys, welcome back to the Shipmate YouTube channel. This week, we're talking about the product life cycle. That's right, your products go through the circle of life too. So guys, today we're talking about the product life cycle. And we're going to talk about, the different stages your product goes through throughout its lifetime until that product no longer exists and is discontinued. So without further ado, let's get started. The first step in the product life cycle is the introduction, right? This is when you're doing a lot of product development, R&D, you're tweaking the product, you're designing it, you're doing some initial sales, you're getting out there, you're finding these early adopters and innovators, and you're getting your product in their hands, right? You might not have a lot of sales, but you've spent a lot of money. And, your product is just starting to prove its viability. It's a new product. It's a baby. It needs to be nurtured. You need to, pay a lot of attention to it, spend a lot of ad dollars, and really, nurture it into the next phase, which is growth. So when a product hits the growth phase, this is when it's going to be gaining a little more momentum. Usually you see a lot of ad spend, a lot of PPC ads and things like that around the product. And this is where you start to cross that profitability threshold, right? This is where, there's more early adopters, there's more, people adopting the product, using the product, and you're starting to see substantial sales. And they're growing month over month, week over week. You have ever increasing sales. And usually at this point, you're starting to taper down R&D. The product's becoming pretty well developed. There's, maybe some minor changes to the packaging or whatnot, but the product is pretty much figured out. It exists in the form it's probably going to stay in for the rest of its life cycle. There might be some tweaks later, but for the most part, you got it all figured out. And, this product is beginning to get some traction and it's growing. The next phase is maturity. Now, maturity is an interesting one because depending on the product, maturity can last anywhere from a few weeks all the way up to decades, right? So maturity is when this product has kind of reached its peak sales, right? Like the product is no longer growing. It's kind of tapered off. The sales have become more predictable, but it's still selling pretty good. Usually at this point, it has good market penetration, and you don't have to spend as much on the sales and marketing side of things. People are pretty aware of the product. They buy it when they need it. And this is really where you make your money because your expenses are down. You've already paid for all that R&D and the ads early on, and now you're really just milking that product for profit. So maturity is a really interesting phase because there's some products, like for example the new iPhone, that goes out of style every year, right? And you have other products, let's say toothpicks, right? Like when does a toothpick go out of style, right? It doesn't. There's a constant demand. And because of this, different products reach maturity in different amounts of time, and they stay there in different amounts of time. But maturity is really where you're going to milk that money. The final stage is decline. Now, decline is kind of the slow and steady death of your product. Usually you'll see sales begin to taper off and decrease and might even completely dissipate. Usually this is because of one of two things. Either the market is saturated with your product, right? Like, you can only sell so many new iPhones before everyone has one, right? Or the product has been basically made obsolete by either competitors or a newer version. So, at this stage, you start to see the sales taper off. A lot of times, sellers will just let the product exist until they're out of inventory. But at this point, you're kind of winding it down, maybe making your last couple orders. But you know that the end is in sight. Usually what happens when this phase happens, you have a lot of spending in R&D to create either an entirely new product that's going to replace this product in your catalog, or you're completely doing a redesign and creating an entirely new updated version that is significantly better than the current version that exists. And, you're kind of just tapering off the product until it no longer exists. You see this with like VCRs. There's nobody selling VCRs anymore. Like, they have completely and totally disappeared from the market. There's nobody manufacturing new VCRs. But then you can take something like the iPhone example, and you can still technically buy 2 models back of the iPhone from Apple. Not a lot of people are doing it. Everybody wants the new one, but they still sell it until they sell out of it and run through their stock. So, these are 2 different examples of a product in decline. So guys, it's really important to know where you are at in the product life cycle, because it can help inform your ad spend, it can help inform your R&D, it can help inform a lot of your macro business decisions based on where you are at and where various products in your catalog are at. Because if you have a lot of products that are aging that you've been selling for years, it might be time to do a refresh. Or if you have a bunch of new products, it might be time to invest a little bit more money in ads and really try to foster those things into a growth phase. I hope you guys learned something today about the product life cycle. It's a really important part of running a business and understanding how consumers interact with your products. So guys, if you could do us a favor, give us a like, give us a share, give us a subscribe. We're currently in a growth phase right here, and we need your help to keep growing. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.